Okay, everyone, it is 2:30, so we are not going to waste any time, and we're going to get started right on the dot. Welcome, everyone, to the DIDD and TennCare IDD Program Integration WebEx. We're glad you're here with us today. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get through to the presentation. First of all, please mute your phones. We want to make this a productive call for everyone, and one person who does not mute can ruin an entire WebEx. We've got almost 200 people on here currently, and so we do want to make sure that everyone can hear us and hear the information that is being provided. Two, we're going to start one. I'm going to give this to Commissioner Brad Turner in just a second to make some opening remarks. But as a reminder, we do have a chat box where we would ask people to ask their questions. One thing that I would like to say, what we saw last week is we had a lot of people who were asking questions that were going to be answered a little later in the presentation. So please listen to the presentation so that you might be able to hear your answer and not just start asking questions off the bat that could possibly have an answer. We are here to take questions. We are here to answer your questions, and we will save time to make sure that we can do that after the end. So with those two things, I am joined here by Jordan Allen, who is IDD's Deputy Commissioner of Program Operations, and also Patty Killingsworth, who is Assistant Commissioner and Chief of Long-Term Services and Supports for the Division of TennCare. So they will be assisting and answering questions for us. I'm not sure if I introduced myself. I'm Kara Kumari. I'm Assistant Commissioner for Communications and External Affairs for the department. But we're going to start this off with Commissioner Brad Turner. He's going to give us some remarks and really get to why we're doing this and why we think it's important and why we want to share it with you all. Commissioner.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Kara. And again, good afternoon to everyone. I certainly appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us. And I know that there's a lot of anxiety built around this, and there's some concerns and questions about what exactly is happening and what is that going to look like. And we certainly want to make sure that we make ourselves available to you in any manner to make sure that you feel comfortable with what's going on and the progress and the steps that we're taking. As Kara alluded to, we've certainly enjoyed a very strong partnership with TennCare and Patty Killingsworth and her team as it relates to creating a system that's going to be world-class. And that's what we want to do at the end of the day, is continue to make sure that Tennessee stays a nationwide leader in developing and providing supports and services to individuals that we care about the most. And a lot of that can be very scary, and I recognize that. And I think most of you know. If you don't, I'll just give you a quick 15-second synopsis. That first and foremost, that I'm the parent of a child with medical and complex disabilities, both intellectual and developmental. My daughter Kinsley has cerebral palsy, nonverbal, epilepsy, a number of other medical ailments that she has. And so when I look at these programs and when I see the names of the individuals that we currently support and recognize the opportunities that we have to create a system that's going to support people, I want you to know that I picture Kinsley right alongside your children and the people that you care about the most. So this is not something that any of us take lightly. I recognize the complexity and the challenge that's ahead of us, but I want you to know that it's easy for me to say to you, hey, just trust us on this. I can't do that yet. But what I would like you to do is just give us a chance to be able to explain to you what we want to do, why we think that a single system like this has significant value across the network, and why we believe that it's going to continue to have Tennessee standing out in front of everyone in the country on what we're doing to delivery supports. In fact, I was on a call yesterday with NASD's, and one of their board of directors specifically said to me, Tennessee is always helping lead the way with new things. And I took that as a compliment, and it was said in a compliment. I want you to know that the last thing that we want to do would be something that would be scary and would take away from your loved ones. That is not what I'm about. I'm not about any of that. I know that TennCare is not about that. Director Smith and I have spoken a number of times related to the fact of what can we do to be even better today than we were yesterday, and how can we make sure that we capture the individuals that need support today and tomorrow that we might have missed yesterday. So as we're continuing to navigate through this, please make sure to ask questions. I know that Kara and Patty and Jordan and others, when they comment today, are going to talk about this system is still in the process of being developed. This is not something that's already been done and we're telling you on the tail end of that completion. This is brand new. And I can't think of a better week for us to actually have this conversation then on the heels of the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act into law. It shows us how far we've come since 1990, but it's also a great reminder to me about the progress that we still need to make. And that's making sure that we're delivering a system and building a support structure that meets the needs of everyone, not just a select few. So as we're going through these presentations and as we're working together, partner with us, commit to us that you're going to be asking the questions that we need. You are going to be able to see my blind spots. I need to know what you're seeing that I'm not thinking about. And I want to know that because we want to build a system that meets the needs for everyone all across the state of Tennessee. And again, for the first time, we're building something and we're continuing to push forward on the idea that everyone deserves an opportunity in employment. Everyone deserves to be able to live the types of lives that they've envisioned for themselves. And when you look at these individuals that we love, I'm telling you, if you look at them through the lens that God sees them through instead of the lens that man and society sees them through, it completely changes how you see someone's ability and how you love on that person and how you do everything you can in your power to make sure that they're successful. So join us on this journey because we're certainly going to need you, and I'm looking forward to walking with you together. Kara?
Kara, you're on mute. This is Jordan.
Thank you. I also take my own advice, as I say, and sometimes I get caught taking my own advice when people are actually supposed to hear me. So before I talk about how excited we are, I should probably unmute myself. We are very excited to be here, and we're excited to share this information with you today. We believe, as Commissioner said, that this is an exciting time for DIDD and really is going to be a change that benefits all people with disabilities in the state of Tennessee. I'm going to run through this presentation really quickly, and then, of course, as I mentioned, we have the chat box, and we will take questions and answers as well. So we will get started. So over the course of the next few minutes, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to share some information about IDD program integration. Why are we doing this? What are the benefits to doing this? What is this going to look like? We're going to share some of that information. We're going to discuss the approach to doing it and also what this new system structure is going to look like. And then a lot of people are asking, okay, so what happens next? When is this going to happen? How long is this going to take? And how can we be a part of it? And we're also going to talk about that. I want to touch on the fact that stakeholder input is going to be layered, meaning that not only are we going to take input before we design the program, but we're also going to take input after we design the program to make sure that we're really, we've collected that input and that we're doing the things that we believe will benefit the system and hear feedback on those and hear concerns or any questions. I've often said that I've never seen so far in my time here at DIDD a waiver amendment that the draft looked exactly like the final submission, because stakeholder input has always made a difference in finding things or making additions or making changes. So that input is very important, and we encourage you all to make it. So when we talk about the goals for IDD integration, first of all, you've probably heard, or maybe you have read the concept paper that says that we're looking to create a single, seamless, person-centered system of service delivery for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That is the main reason we're doing that. We want to make sure that we're providing services in a seamless, integrated way, that just because a person is in this program or that program, that there's not different expectations, that there aren't different barriers. We want to make sure we're connecting all of those services under one umbrella and really under the department's leadership. And that will help because we'll be able to leverage DIDD's expertise and commitment and ensure best practices across the IDD programs and services. Once again, it's not going to be, oh, a person, DIDD will only look out for the 1915C waivers, but they're only going to do these things in the ECF waivers. We're going to take our whole approach, and we're really going to leverage all that expertise across different systems. That includes leveraging person-centered planning and a technology-first approach to support independence, employment, and development of natural supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We are we are excited about bringing some of the things we've learned over our decades of providing services to new programs and really focus on what leads to a good life and making sure our services are putting the person first and really leveraging their own thoughts and dreams and desires and outcomes to make sure that our services are reflective of that and it's about them and not what we think they should have. We want to also use value-based reimbursement to drive delivery system reward providers for delivering high-value outcomes. What that basically means is we want to make sure that for the outcomes where people do want to see independence and employment, we want to make sure that our structure and the reimbursement structure is incentivizing that and rewarding people for achieving those outcomes. We'll align systems and requirements to reduce duplicative processes and administrative burdens for providers. We'll better utilize limited staffing resources. It is not a secret to anyone in Tennessee that we are currently engaged in a DSP workforce crisis and have been for some time. And we really need to make sure we're doing the things we can to utilize those limited resources and divert them and make sure they're going to the people and the services and supports that need them the most. Also, we would like to utilize increased efficiencies across IDD program budgets to serve more people off the waiting list. We'll talk a little bit about this later, but currently we have more than 5,000 people who say they want services and they want services now. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to use the limited financial resources that exist to be able to serve as many people as possible. And finally, we'd like to take advantage of increased revenue opportunity, which will help prevent cuts that would otherwise likely be necessary. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in just a little while. So here's where we are right now. First of all, when we talk about system alignment, while we've just put the concept paper out, the concept itself is not something that's new. I think that this is something that we've really envisioned for a long time. And last year in 2019, as a part of Governor Lee's strategic planning process for the first 4 years of his administration, all agencies were asked to develop goals for what do we want to accomplish in the next 4 years. And DIDD and TennCare shared a vision and therefore decided to share a goal as well. And that was to focus on developing a model partnership between the two agencies, to eliminating the wait list for services, addressing those workforce challenges we talked about with the DSP shortage, increasing independence, and aligning requirements to create a single person-centered system for people with IDD. So we shared this vision and we put this in our strategic plan. Right now, the current situation doesn't exactly lend itself to that single seamless system because we have 5 separate Medicaid funded programs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Those are the 3 1915C home and community-based waivers, the statewide waiver, the CAC waiver, and the self-determination waiver. Sometimes those are called the DIDD waivers because they're operated, the day-to-day oversight is done by DIDD. Then there's the Employment and Community First Choices program, which started in 2016. And that serves approximately 3,000 people, 3,200 people. And that is administered by the MCOs and with oversight from TennCare. And then finally, we have many private intermediate care facilities for people with intellectual disabilities across the state as well. As I mentioned before, we have more than 5,000 persons with IDD who are currently waiting for home and community-based services. So that's where we were and have been for some time. However, an added layer happened in March when a state of emergency was declared over the COVID-19 public health emergency. This resulted in significant budget challenges, and it forced the elimination of the planned and proposed 2,000 slots for employment and community first choices, and to allow us to really make a dent in that waiting list. Obviously, when revenues dropped, the state can't spend money it doesn't have, and so adjustments had to be made. And one of the adjustments that was made was to eliminate those proposed 2,000 slots. And as many of you may be aware, agencies have been asked to identify further reductions as well. So we really wanted to take a look at how we might be able to not impact persons' current services in light of huge budgetary challenges that are being faced by the state and the nation as we deal with the COVID-19 public health emergency. So when we talk about IDD program integration, what does that mean? What are we saying when we say that? What we mean is that DIDD and TennCare plan to align all Medicaid programs and services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities under the direct operational leadership, management, and oversight of DIDD. This will include, like we've talked about, all of those different services we just talked about. Private ICF facility for IID services, those 1915 home and community-based waiver services, and employment and community first choices. And this will be under the day-to-day operation of DIDD through TennCare's partnerships with its managed care organizations. This will allow us to create that single, seamless, person-centered service delivery system that we envisioned a long time ago and really put on paper when we said we want to make this happen a year ago. And by leveraging these managed care partnerships with all programs, the state will yield an estimated $34 million increased in revenues, which will help fill budget gaps. So the other opportunity we have here is, rather than having to make some very tough decisions, potentially for cuts, we would actually be able to generate revenue through this process and really be able to stave off those cuts and plug budget holes. So why do this? Why are we doing this? We've talked a little bit about what we're doing, but why are we doing this? First of all, it's not about the money when we're talking about that $34 million in revenue. The real reason we're doing this is because we see an opportunity. We see an opportunity to really expand the use of a technology-first approach and also maximize integration and reduce unnecessary and undesired dependence. DIDD has had an enabling technology program for 2 years now. And already we've seen more than 100 people who are achieving a level of independence that they desired that many people did not think was previously possible. And they're doing it in a way that allows them to have control of their lives, but also has the opportunity that help is not far away should they request additional support. Also, we want to harness the expertise of DIDD employees and leverage the collective resources and experience across all IDD programs to promote the most innovative and effective person-centered program concepts. DIDD houses people who have been, employees who have been doing this for years, and they are experts in the provision of clinical supports, in enabling technology, person-centered supports, and we have a lot of this knowledge. And we've been giving it to folks in the 1915C waivers, but we really need to be able to extend that to all people with disabilities and be able to really make sure that the services and supports that we've been charged with giving are able to be accessed from people no matter what program they're in. Also, we'll align requirements for critical incident management, quality assurance and improvement, and direct support for workforce training and qualifications, and provider qualifications and enrollment in the credentialing process. One of the things we've heard for a long time is that for providers doing a similar task in 4 different systems is burdensome and causes them to spend too much time, more time than necessary, accomplishing those same things 4 different ways that could otherwise be spent really providing excellent services to people with disabilities. And we're hoping that this alignment will help ease those burdens. And then finally, it'll allow us to utilize those limited funds and limited staffing resources to serve more people. So we talked about why we're doing this. Now, I guess when we say approach, it's how are we going to do this? How are we actually going to approach this? And I will say this, there are a lot of things that we know the approach we know we're going to do, but there are so many things that have not been decided because we really value that stakeholder feedback. And so this is where you all will help play a part in providing us with some of that feedback. First, we're going to do this using value-based reimbursement and aligned with system values and outcomes. We want to make sure that those the providers that are doing that are helping support people's goals and dreams are rewarded for those efforts and are incentivized to provide those services and supports that are person-centered and tailored to the individual. Also, the program will be designed to support personal empowerment through the development of natural support networks and feature innovative service packages aimed at personal achievement, integration, and competitive integrated employment. One of the things that we saw through our enabling technology effort is when we talk about natural supports, is when the first person who was in our enabling technology program, Carl, moved into his own home, he immediately developed friends in his neighborhood. And some of those friends started taking him to church. And so not only did he then go from a 24/7 supported living environment, which he did not like, and he says on our video, he did not like that. He lived independently, developed a neighborhood network of friends, and then also developed a church family of friends as well. And those are the kinds of things that we see that can happen in many, 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 many other instances. And we're excited about those opportunities. Also, this approach will be evidenced by an increase in working age adults in competitive integrated employment and the fading of traditional and direct support arrangements based on needs and preferences. Going back to Carl, his need and preference was to live independently, and he would, and also to have a job. He has both of those things. So, so we have really seen how allowing a person to live life on their own terms has yielded incredible results that have made the person happier and really developed those natural support networks and also improved quality of life. So we talked about the how. Now here are the bones or the details and structure of what we're going to do. First of all, the new system structure will look like this. All long-term services and supports for persons with IDD will be under the direct leadership, management, and oversight of DIDD and administered through the managed care delivery system. And when we say managed care delivery system, we mean the three MCOs that MCO health plans that are currently contracted with TennCare, AmeriGroup, Blue Care, and United Healthcare. DIDD will contract with TennCare and also jointly manage the contracts with each of the three MCOs currently supporting the population. All three of those MCOs currently have a footprint in the Employment and Community First Choices program. So they are already providing services and supports to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. DIDD will help to support and streamline MCO's network development and management and help drive program quality and outcomes while minimizing provider administrative burden. So so DIDD under the direct operational leadership will support the MCOs in some very key areas and really bring our expertise to this broader population. So what does that look like? Here is a little breakdown of the new system structure responsibilities. So DIDD, as I said, will be in charge of day-to-day management of all program services for people with IDD, directly oversee MCO contracts for IDD benefits, and this will be done in partnership with, in consultation with TennCare. We will continue to be responsible for reportable event management, quality assurance and improvement, and then other areas of day-to-day oversight. TennCare is the state Medicaid agency, so they are the Medicaid administrative authority across all Medicaid programs and services, and they, of course, will retain that. They will directly oversee MCO contracts for other integrated benefits in partnership and consultation with DIDD. That includes physical and behavioral health benefits, pharmacy, and dental. So DIDD and TennCare will still be working very closely on behalf of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities together, as we have for many years. So what are the benefits of this? Here are some of the benefits that are going to be derived from this. First of all, the array of services and supports that are currently offered are largely going to still be available. But it's important to note that we will leverage flexibilities such as enabling technology, telehealth, integration, training and consultation, and will focus on supporting people to develop independence and natural support networks. And this is something that I have talked about for a while, is that the coordination of children and adult services for people with IDD within DIDD will really start to lay the foundation. Some of you are aware, maybe not all of you, but DIDD has recently taken oversight of the Tennessee Early Intervention System Program, TEIS. That has been transitioned from the Department of Education to DIDD, and that provides services and supports for children up until the age of 3, so that they can achieve their optimal development. And then in the future, DIDD will be operating the Part B of the Katie Beckett program as well, which will also provide services and supports to children who are not otherwise Medicaid, who would be Medicaid eligible if not for their parents' income and assets, up to the age of 18. And then with oversight over adult service, all the adult services programs, really what we see is an opportunity to not only align those services, but really to start to develop those expectations for employment and independence and early engagement of that natural support network. It's a lot easier to make friends and develop natural support sometimes when you're young than it is when you're older. And to be able to start engaging that process and setting those expectations at a young age will really be a benefit to everyone and allow for a seamless transition where applicable from one program to the other. Also, as we've talked about, it will yield an immediate 5.5% net increase in state revenues, which is about $34 million in state funds. That would, and it will allow us to avoid service cuts or provider rate cuts that probably would have been necessary as a part of a reduction plan. Now we'll talk a little bit about the timeline and the process. TennCare will maintain the existing 1915C waivers with modifications as needed, and then we'll submit an 1115 waiver request for concurrent 1115 demonstration authority to bring those 1915C waivers and IID benefits under the managed care program. So these are the first steps to making this happen. The goal is ultimately to have full integration by July 1, 2021. One thing that I think is important here is when we're talking about making modifications to the 1915C waivers and we talk about developing a new program, those are not one and the same. Those are two separate steps. So we will be maintaining and modifying the 1915C waivers, and then separately from that, it's all connected, but separately from that, we will then be developing the new program. So the timeline for submitting those waiver amendments is not the same as developing the new program. Now, I mentioned this at the beginning. A lot of people read the concept paper and they say, wow, it's all already done. You've already had this idea. The concept paper doesn't have a lot of details in it, and there's a reason for it, because we need your help in helping us determine some of those details. So the concept paper is the idea and the foundation for the house that we're building, but we haven't framed it out. We haven't designed the rooms, which is my favorite part, and we haven't really even there's no front door. That's because we want to hear your advice before we even start to really get into the intricate parts of the design of this. So one of the ways we're going to do this is by gathering stakeholder input before we have a draft amendment. And here are the stakeholder input questions that we're asking. What are the most important values that must be part of a new aligned system for people with IDD? After reading the concept paper, what are you most concerned about as it relates to people who receive services in their families, as it relates to provider of these services, and as it relates to managed care? Do you have any recommendations on how to address those concerns? And do you have any other recommendations to share? So before we get to questions, I will say this. We are now at the point where we have posted our, hopefully y'all can see this. Can somebody give me an affirmative if you can? Yes, I am sharing the web browser. So if you go to the DIDD page, and we will soon have a slider here, but you can find it under the Community Services tab. And we will be providing a direct link to this. You'll see the person-centered IDD program integration page. And this is where we have information already about the integration letter, the concept paper, frequently asked questions. And one of the things we will have on this page, and we should have very shortly on this page, is a way for folks to be able to provide input into into the program. And we will be making that live any second now. And then you can also find it on the TennCare IDD integration page as well. So we will be able to hear your input, and we would encourage you to start providing that input as soon as possible. So that is where we are right now. We are here now to take some questions. And like I said, I've got Deputy Commissioner Jordan Allen on and Assistant Commissioner from TennCare, Patty Killingsworth, on to help take questions. So let me go start to look and see what we have. Okay, please provide specific examples of how you will be leveraging resources and leveraging flexibilities. Jordan, I'd like you to answer that question if you can.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Kara, thank you for the presentation. So leverages and flexibilities, leveraging flexibilities and resources obviously is one of the foundational components of the alignment effort. So that stretches across provider resources, state resources, and clinical resources. A couple of easy examples, bringing to bear the experience of the managed care organizations and providers within the ECF program, combined with some of the experiences that we've been observing for the last couple of years in the 1915C programs, picking and pulling from what has produced the most progressive environment for people supported, what has allowed people to move through their outcomes to a place of achievement in both programs, and bringing those across the span of HCBS is kind of the underlying goal there. From a resource standpoint, I think that it's really important for us to think about how provider agencies and the state as a whole are using resources right now. So we've talked a lot about, and the concept paper certainly contained components of, the idea around us being able to look at systems across all of the HCBS programs and eliminate duplicative efforts. A great example is provider credentialing, for instance. Currently, most of the providers in the ECF program are also providers within the 1915C waiver program. And the fact that those provider agencies generally have to engage in 4 separate credentialing processes, each of the 3 managed care organizations maintain their own, and then the department maintains a credentialing or a provider enrollment process on the 1915C side, when in fact, those requirements and our expectations for providers in both networks are much the same, and certainly not unique enough that they should have to go through 4 separate processes. That's an easy area for us to be able to streamline. What that does is free up provider agencies within the network from a resource, both human and financial resource perspective, to redirect those resources into quality supports for people supported. Flexibilities is kind of spanning both programs also. What we want to be able to do, certainly with the onset of the ECF program, the program at its root was based on an expectation that people, 1, wanted to work and achieve independence, and then 2, set up from a program perspective to allow people the nimbleness within their service package and the ability to achieve those goals without the expectation of supports that ultimately we've learned, not just here in Tennessee, but across the country, can sometimes produce a learned dependence. We saw much of the same, as Kara referenced, in the enabling technology pilot programs that we've been running for a couple of years now. Folks that had been receiving services on a 24/7 basis with the advent or with the implementation of some technology-enhanced service environments, were able to very quickly achieve a level of independence that gave them a much more flexible lifestyle. Kara referenced Carl, and if you haven't seen Carl's video, I would implore you to go watch it. But there are folks now spread across the system that are leveraging a degree of flexibility that certainly is allowing them to control more of their time, their day, and certainly reach their desired life. So we think that there are examples across both systems that we can pull in, we can leverage and then stretch across all programs that ultimately will make a better in product for users.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jordan. When the integration process is completed, will services for persons in the 1915C waivers be limited to the services and levels of funding that are currently available in the ECF program? Patty, would you like to take this question?
Sure, happy to do that. I think the short answer to that is no. Again, I want to set expectations around what this looks like. When we talk about creating a single aligned system, that really is a process. So the first phase of that process will be bringing all of these programs and services together and aligning them under the leadership of the department. That's kind of phase one. You really want to bring that expertise to bear and begin to create common leadership and vision across the programs. And then over time, we're going to be looking at ways to bring those programs into greater alignment. When we think about processes that providers follow, or the way that we do person-centered planning, or what those person-centered plans look like, that doesn't mean that we will ever get to the place of where there is a single set of benefits and a single set of cost caps. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I think that's going to take time, and we're going to have to walk that out. But what I don't think what we would be doing ever is sort of saying we're going to take everything and fit it into the existing employment and community first choices structure, because the programs are very, very different, and we would want to make sure that designing a single program in a way that would meet the needs of all of the people, including the people who are being served across the full array of programs, including in ICF IDD services, which are not a part of employment and community first choices. So lots of work will be done over the course of many years, I think, to try to get to as much alignment as we possibly can, while recognizing that nothing will probably look exactly as it does in any one program today, right? We wouldn't take one program and say it's all going to look like this, because we're going to be building that over the course of time, and always with feedback from people.
Great, thank you very much, Patty. We had a question, what is the deadline for submitting feedback? We're planning on 2 weeks, but in open line, I will provide a deadline. If you all are not following us or receiving open line, please let me know, and we will be happy to get you on the list. That's how we communicate weekly with our stakeholder groups at DIDD. I believe we're targeting 2 weeks for that feedback, so that we can really have time to review it and analyze it, and make some decisions based on it. Also, the next question is when the integration process, my mouse jumped. With the integration of services, will there be a reevaluation of the current CAC waiver requirements, more specifically the monetary cap for individuals who require med-res or more intensive services as they age? Patty, would you like to take that question?
So I think the question was, are we going to reevaluate the aggregate expenditure cap in the CAC waiver? I think we are going to look at whether there's any changes that we want to make that would not have a negative impact on the people who are currently enrolled in that program, right? So what we're not going to do is reduce the expenditure cap and force people to reduce their services in order to remain eligible for the program. Generally, I think our intent, especially for July 1, is to largely maintain the existing cost cap structure across all of the programs as they exist today, but we will be looking to see if any adjustments are appropriate, so long as they don't negatively impact people.
Okay, thank you very much, Patty. The next question is what has been learned from the ECF and Katie Beckett design and implementation process that will be applied here? I'm going to ask Patty to weigh in on this, but I want to say from the communications effort, I would say that one thing that at least from the Katie Beckett design, and implementation process that we learned is how important it is to get that feedback on the front end before we design the program. Because some of the things that we heard directly from families, some of the things we heard during our stakeholder meetings in person, and also from that online forum really informed the services that are offered in the program. So we want to make sure, and having been a part of the stakeholder feedback process in ECF 7 years ago, I would say that the same things are true for that. Is the things we heard from families and the things we heard from that feedback process really did go into how the program looked like and was designed. And Patty may want to weigh in more on that, but that just from my observations, those are the things that I feel like we are bringing and want to continue to bring to this.
Yeah, and Kara, I think you did a great job of answering that question. I think you also did a great job of leading a lot of those stakeholder input efforts across both of those initiatives. I wholeheartedly agree that the way that we went about that, really gathering input on the front end and then coming back and gathering input again, as we talked about draft waiver submissions, and then continuing to seek input. I think one great example of that is the technical advisory group that we convened for the Katie Beckett program to work on the medical eligibility or level of care standards, and really, being able to walk through that very challenging process with physicians, but also with family members who had children who would ultimately use those services was incredibly beneficial to us. I would also add, I think that just the partnership between DIDD and TennCare in both of those initiatives was really an essential part of making sure that we got to the right place in terms of understanding and really using that feedback to drive program design.
Thank you, Patty. The next question is will persons in the self-determination waiver program be required to work? Jordan, do you want to take that?
Sure thing. So first and foremost, what I would say is we're not, nor is TennCare in the business of mandating outcomes. So certainly people are not required to work. However, what I will say is given the opportunity to work, and Kara, you'll know this very directly as we do quite a bit of surveying and community conversations, I've yet to meet but a handful of people in 25 years or so that when presented with an informed choice as to whether or not they would like to pursue employment, choose to not pursue the potential that they could be employed. And so I think it's a much different conversation, and this really will be at the root of a lot of the work we do very early on as we start to think about the design and planning, the development of the planning process and the design of the support plan document and the development of meaningful outcomes that are driven actually by the person supported and not so much driven by the way the system has unfortunately learned to funnel people into specific lanes. I think that when you ask somebody, do you want to work? It's a much different question than when you ask somebody, do you know how you can go to work? And then when you can explain to somebody how they can get from where they are today to competitive and integrated employment, and certainly, I have conversations, as does Patty and a lot of us, with families on a pretty consistent basis that once the pre-employment services, once the development process, that kind of continuity of supports that leads somebody to meaningful, competitive and integrated employment is explained, then folks are willing to engage in those initial steps. And what we found, not just us, but the service system as a whole has found is when people engage in that continuity of service that leads to employment, they frequently end in competitive and integrated employment. So will people be required to work? The answer to that question is no. Just as you or I or anybody else has a choice, people will maintain that choice. We certainly are going to assure that folks are provided with an environment of information and can make that decision in an informed way and aware of the tools that are in place right now to help them get there.
Thank you, Jordan. And one thing I remember from probably a year after ECF Choices started that was a really impressive statistic to me was that of the people who went through the exploration and discovery process in employment and community first choices who didn't have an employment goal initially, I believe 80% of them decided they wanted to pursue employment after going through that process of really understanding what a job looked like. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited to be able to add those services to the 1915C waivers, because when people are given the opportunity oftentimes to see what employment could mean to them and look like for them, they want to be a part of it. And so that was a really exciting statistic for me, and really excited to be able to continue that process. What is the rationale for including ICF? And I will go to Patty on that one.
Sure, happy to talk about that. You know, you really can't create a single aligned system if you don't include all of the benefits and all of the people who are receiving services in the program. So that's really a first part of the rationale is, you know, if we're going to create a system where we can align the goals and the values and the outcomes, we want to include all of the people and all of the benefits. We also want to make sure that we're using those services in the best way possible, and that when a person chooses to go into an ICF, that they really understand the full array of options that are available to them, and that services in an ICF really are the most integrated setting that is appropriate for them. We've long talked about how we could have better insight into that process. I think this will help us to get better insight into that process and really make sure that people are receiving their services in the most integrated setting where they have the best opportunities to be able to work and to become as independent as possible. Honestly, when we think about the revenue gains that are helping us to avoid some of the other reductions that Kara talked about earlier on that have resulted from COVID impacts on the state budget, both in terms of expenses and revenues, part of getting to that $34 million state encompasses all of the benefits for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So absent the inclusion of those, we would need to make program reductions in all likelihood in other areas to offset that. The other thing that I would just mention is as we think about 75% of the people who are in the 1915C waivers, it varies a little bit by waiver, in addition to being eligible for Medicaid or eligible for Medicare. And so they have these two relatively complex federal health insurance programs that they're supposed to use in order to access all of the health care and behavioral health and other services that they need. And it's challenging to be able to do that. So there exists under federal regulation some special provisions for coordination of those benefits. It's called a fully integrated dual eligible special needs plan, where a single entity can really come together and help a person coordinate across their Medicare and Medicaid benefits. And those plans, we often call them FIDE plans, are only available if there's an arrangement where all of the benefits are a part of that same plan. So you have to be able to include the institutional benefit as well as the home and community-based benefit, along with the physical health and behavioral health and pharmacy services for those individuals to really provide that fully integrated and coordinated system. And if you don't bring those in, then you're not able to set up that kind of an arrangement, which can be really, really beneficial for people.
Great. Our next question is have the desired outcomes that will dictate the value-based reimbursement been established yet? If not, who will be a part of establishing the outcome priorities and how will they be created? Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Kara. So the short answer is no, we haven't established those outcomes yet. I will certainly offer that we have some pretty good ideas around what it is we would like to see people achieve or at least what we would like to enable people to achieve and how we would like to incentivize the system to help people move along there. I talked a little bit earlier about the development of truly person-centered quality plans and outcomes. And I think that what we want to try to do is, one, assure that people can get a plan in place that really identifies where they are today and where they'd like to be a year from now, get quality outcomes in place with the assistance of their case manager and their provider agency, and then we want to see people achieve those outcomes. And so I think that there are several layers of specific areas that we want to highlight to incentivize. Certainly, we will continue to press very aggressively for people to pursue independent options, integrated employment options, certainly leveraging technology to become more independent. But I think outcomes and achievement look different for every single person. And at the root and at the heart of that is the development of a plan that truly personifies where it is that person wants to get. Patty, do you have anything you want to add on to that?
No, I think it's very much like, say, what we've talked about when we talk about what we're trying to achieve with the system alignment, in that we've been working on these things and talking about these things for a very long time. We've been thinking about value-based payment arrangements, and we're doing some of that work in some of the other programs and services that we provide. But it's also important that you understand that it's all still very much a work in progress, and so there is opportunity to provide input into that and to help shape what that ultimately looks like.
Okay, will the employment informed choice process from ECF be implemented into the 1915C waivers to ensure people explore employment in order to be eligible to receive facility community-based day programs? Patty, do you want to weigh in on this?
I would say that's not something that we've actually specifically discussed yet. As you pointed out, Kara, it's been extremely beneficial for people. And we've seen a really high success rate. People who originally either said, I don't want to work, or I'm not really sure if I want to work, have walked out on the other side of that process after really understanding what it means to work and that it might be possible for them, have walked out saying, yes, I really do want to pursue employment. That says there's value in that kind of a process, just making sure that people really can make an informed decision. So we invite your input on that, and that is obviously a decision that we'll need to make as we put together documents for our federal partners.
Great, thank you very much, Patty. And just so you all know, we have about 8 minutes left, and I still see a lot of questions, but we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can in these next 8 minutes. The next question is will families lose their current ISC? Jordan, would you like to weigh in on this?
Sure, and I think that was Kara's cue to me to be short and concise. So the short answer to that question is no. In the interim period, as we consider how we can develop plans in a way that certainly we're all proud of, how we can develop outcomes, how we can equip care managers, support coordinators, and DIDD case managers with the tools that they need to build the best plan possible that allows people to truly actualize their own goals. We want to maintain continuity and relationships across all systems. So your ISC now will continue to be your ISC for the foreseeable future after we develop the plan or the approach by which we can gauge effectiveness. I think what our thought is we want to watch how case management entities actualize the process, and we want to see who's doing what job the best, and we want to see how people are achieving outcomes down the road. And that's at the end of that, when we've got data that supports what the most effective system is, then we want to be able to drive the system in the direction of achievement. That doesn't necessarily mean that there'll ever be a change in support coordination agencies and the people for whom they're providing service, or care managers, or even that DIDD will be out of the case management business as it applies to SD case management. It just means that we want to take a good look at how care coordination is provided, how plans are developed, and how outcomes are being drafted and realized across all the different ways that they're being provided. In short, you won't lose your current ISC. as we move into this alignment process.
And the only thing I would add to that, which was beautifully stated, is that it's a great example of where input helped drive those design decisions. Because when we made the announcement of our plan to do this, we didn't know the answer to that question, right? We really hadn't, we had not decided what support coordination would look like, who would do it. And we received an overwhelming amount of feedback from people on this topic specifically, which really helped inform that decision to honor continuity as it relates to the people providing those services, but to really take the opportunity to evolve the role and align it with system outcomes, and then create an opportunity to really compare the efficacy of the different models. So I would say your input really does matter, and we really are listening.
Okay, our next question. As a residential provider, will we continue to build DIDD or directly build TennCare? Will the integration plan address long delays in reimbursements through other methods? Jordan, can you answer this question?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. I think Patty and I can probably combine on this one too. So as a residential provider within the 1915C program, you will continue billing in just the way that you are, and providers on the ECF side of the fence will continue to bill in the way that they are, again, as we continue to develop this alignment process. I think that, you know, going back to one of the conversations or one of the responses we were having earlier in the presentation, a real opportunity exists for us here to think about a very streamlined billing process. And I think that when you start to talk about delay in reimbursement, you know, there are other pitfalls of multiple billing processes that I think in an aligned system, we have an opportunity to kind of confront head on. And so a singular billing system that allows for, you know, both the managed care organizations in their management of authorizations and their network management duties, but also the department having vision and access to, and certainly streamlining that approach for provider agencies where they can bill in a single system across all of HCBS programs certainly makes sense. Now, because it makes sense, doesn't mean that that's something we can develop. There certainly isn't a shelf product for that kind of thing. And so I think we're just at the beginning of discussions about how we could accomplish that goal, but it certainly feels like heavy but low-hanging fruit. Patty?
And I would add to that it's another example, right, of where we have heard loud and clear, not just in regard to this announcement, but even before, from providers about the burden of billing through multiple systems, concerns regarding authorizations and timely payment and all of those sorts of things. So that really has led us to the desire to create a single aligned system that would be able to manage those authorizations and the billing process, understanding that claims would be processed by the health plans, but the billing process to really streamline and simplify that, and to give DIDD a lot of insight into what that looks like. But for 7-1, right, our goal is continuity. Let's not create a bunch of challenges for providers right out of the gate. So we'll largely have billing processes that for the most part look the same as they do today, even though who's paying your claim could be different or will be different if you are a 1915C provider or an ICFI ID provider.
All right, and unfortunately, we are out of time, but I see that we have a lot of questions. So one thing before I turn it back over to Commissioner Turner to kind of see us out is we are not hiding. We have office hours with Commissioner Turner and the DIDD executive team every Wednesday morning. So feel free to join us with that. You'll always be able to find the information in online. We are happy to continue to have a conversation. And we understand, and we will provide other opportunities to have questions and answers as well, because I think that this has been a very successful and productive couple of WebExes, and we know there are still many other questions, and we want to make sure that you are able to ask them. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Commissioner Turner to say a few words to wrap up.
Thanks, Karen. Again, outstanding questions today from this group. Thank you so much for your participation, and we certainly hope that you understand, as Kara just alluded to and Patty had touched on, that it's a work in progress. We're here to listen, and we want to see those questions come through. I know there's always concern about, well, what if they don't get to my question? There's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to continue to submit questions, and we will do our best to make sure that we provide some answers related to that. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement. But most importantly, thank you for your investment in the person supported and what matters to them and what's important in their life, because we can't do it without you. And I'm grateful that each one of you has stepped up at different levels to participate with us, to partner with us, and to move forward with us in creating a system that's going to benefit everyone that we serve here in Tennessee. So with that, I'll wish you a good evening, and we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. And we will have that feedback form up very shortly on our website, and we would encourage you to visit it and supply feedback, and we appreciate it. We'll talk to you all later. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Take care, everybody.